Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center, and we have two very special guests with us today. First of all, we have Larry Knapek. He's running for the Albany Controller, the Albany County Controller's Office. And we have Larry Rosenbaum. He is a life insurance broker, but also he heads the Independence Party. Welcome to the two Larrys to the Jewish View.
Welcome, thank you, Rabbi.
Well, Larry, first of all, you do have a lot, Larry Rosenbaum, I should say, addressing yourself. You have a lot of connections already with the Jewish community. You're the president of B'nai B'rith, and also that you are the co-founder of Bridge Builders, which links the black community, the Jewish community together, just as the name portrays it, bridge building, the two bridges between the two communities. So you're no stranger to the Jewish community. But now all of a sudden you're into politics over here. You're crossing the threshold from the Jewish community to the entire community. And tell us a little bit what brought you about into it, and a little bit about this Independence Party, something very new and something a little different.
Oh, thank you, Rabbi, and thanks for having us on your show today. Actually, I'm a past president, of course, of B'nai B'rith and the senior trustee of B'nai B'rith Gideon Lodge at this point. Many years ago in 1991, when I was president of B'nai B'rith, that's when we started the Bridge Builders process, which has been going on since that time. It capitalized on a friendship I had with my very good friend of 17 years, Rodney Littles, and it's been based on our friendship that we've been able to bring many people from both communities to the process. Over the years of working on Bridge Builders with Rodney, Rodney also invited me separately to be involved in the Jerry Jennings campaign when he ran for mayor for the city of Albany. And many of your viewers will remember that I handled Jerry's campaign for the Jewish community vote. And at that time, when I was involved in that campaign, the idea behind the campaign was that that the Democratic Party would be opened up and there would be more opportunity for many different new faces to be involved in this process so that more viewpoints could be heard and more new ideas could be brought to the fore. When that really didn't happen as a result of that process, along came this opportunity for the Independence Party, and that happened because Tom Golisano ran for governor and got 4.5% of the vote, and that permanently put a brand new party on Row D, the Independence Party, for 4 years based on those election results. The concept behind the Independence Party I thought was a very good one. It's basically that they feel that the two major political parties have lost touch with the people on an everyday basis, and that citizens don't get the opportunity to be involved in elected office in government, and there isn't a constant flow of citizens to government and back out, which keeps everything fresh and on the up and up. Historically, third parties have been important twice in American history. And that's more than twice, but to bring the two major parties to look at certain issues more carefully, because there's a third party saying this needs to be looked at, this needs to be looked at, even if the two parties have decided not to look at it. Now, in history, the Democratic Party came out of the Federalist Party. That was a third party that became one of the two parties. And the Republican Party replaced the Whig Party as a result of the Civil War. That was a third party that became a second party. So in the past, both of our current parties were third parties themselves at one time in the historical process. Are we at a great historical watershed at this time with, the possibility of a third party nationally, which is what we hear about? This could be a big moment in American history, but whether we elect an independent as a president someday or not, what's important here locally is the opportunity to have another voice to encourage a better type of government, mainly one that is fiscally conservative, open, and responsible to the people, who issue communications to the citizens that can be read and easily understood, and encourage many volunteers to come forward to help fill in that gap between government and citizens. We've reached the logical endpoint of the New Deal plan. So, all the great social programs. And what it basically has come down to is that at some point the rubber has to meet the road. And no matter how much government legislates equal opportunity, and many other things, it's really what happens on the grassroots level, person to person. And that will only happen when volunteers come forward and bridge that gap between the government and the citizenry. And that's a little bit about what the Independence Party is about. Also, being a brand new organization, we don't have a lot of baggage. We don't have 50 or 100 years of history. So therefore, when we build this particular party for the needs of today, we're building a modern, open organization that doesn't owe anyone anything and could stand up for what are the needs of the day. Thanks for that opportunity.
Right, now let's bring this to Knapek over here.
Well, Larry's an excellent example of what we talk about the citizen legislator. See, this is a party plank of the Independence Party that capable citizens should run for political office and be encouraged to run for political office, and it shouldn't be just left to professional politicians who speak a certain political speak to the voters. It should be open to fresh voices who can communicate the needs of today directly to the voter and who eventually serve in government and go back to being private citizens. And in Larry's case, as a CPA, we found him to be eminently qualified to fulfill a controller position in bringing about modernization of local government. One last thought, and that is when the federal money has basically dried up on revenue sharing and state aid to localities, and as this has happened, we the taxpayers have felt the tax bill fall back on us on our property taxes and our school taxes. Bottom line is that there was a tremendous cash flow to the federal government and back to the localities, and all the different government entities along the way rode that flow. And as that flow has collapsed, many of the practices of local government have come much more to the fore because they're no longer hidden by this cash flow between the federal government and the local governments. Now we see just how efficient they are or aren't. And we felt that Larry was uniquely qualified as a CPA and an independent citizen to take a good look at modernization for Albany County.
Very good. Larry, a little basic government over here. I'm sure that the viewers are in the same boat as I am. But a little bit of the function of control. What does the person do, and how can it affect the economy, so to speak, or how it's going to affect people's lives?
First of all, Rabbi, thank you for having me on the show today. The duties of the comptroller, he's the person who's going to manage the county's dollars, determining what funds are available to pay bills and what kind of programs there should be out there to be paid. He's basically he's a watchdog. He protects the county's dollars. He should be a truly independent person, which is one thing that I'm happy to be endorsed by the Independent Party, because this job should not be political.
So in any case, so if there's a budget gap or something, that's where you fit in, so to speak. You're the budget process is where it's important to see if there's enough taxes or there's too much expenditures, and you start telling there's no money. You're like the housewife that's screaming
Yes.
she wants to, there's no money to pay for.
A good controller will definitely enhance the budgetary process by providing accurate numbers. Currently, that's what's been going on in Albany County over the last probably 15 years, is that when they're preparing budgets, they're budgeting with numbers that are not correct. And I proved that back in July when I started scrutinizing the county's books. For 1993, for example, the current administration showed a $2.7 million surplus in its annual financial report. But when the auditors came in a year later, they found a $10.3 million surplus. At that time, the budget was completed, and there was nothing that could be done for the taxpayers. So basically, I'm going to take the politics out of this job by providing accurate numbers, and when we prepare the budget, we're going to budget with good numbers.
It's been in Albany County in the past, I mean, a lot of different, of course, different problems with the budget. We have the Knickerbocker Arena, for example. Do you have any feelings on that? There's always been a feeling that's been a drain on the budget of Albany County. Or, I know that people want to just sell it. Some people feel to sell it to the private entrepreneurs, or else it's just going to be a drain on the taxpayers in Albany County.
I think the Knickerbocker Arena issue really has to be addressed. Some people are for selling it. Some people want to maintain it as a county asset. Depending on interest rates and if time is right, we could save some debt service. I believe $5 million over debt service, which could be very helpful to Albany County taxpayers. So I really see that we really probably should sell it based on the savings in the debt service.
And the Albany County Airport, another, I think, major service of Albany County, besides the roads, I guess, that's always in constant needs of repair, but people always see that that's something of function. They're always, again, arguing, should it be expanded? Is it good enough? Is it, why should we spend extra money for it? Is it worthwhile? Maybe enhance the whole facelift of Albany County, which some people also feel that Albany is a city, which of course Albany County is the major function as city of it, is just that it doesn't have a good face for the for people, for businesses, for example. They feel it's not a business community. It's just maybe people with their state jobs. It's here. They're going to take their state jobs, and other people are not going to move in. And maybe if it'd be nicer, maybe that was because of Knapek Arena also, people felt that it shouldn't be enhanced. But of course, it's got to be a budgetary concerns also. You can't just spend money and make everything beautiful. What do you feel about the airport?
Well, first of all, Rabbi, the airport's a whole different issue. It's a separate entity, and it was not one of the funds that I've looked at. So I really don't want to comment on the airport issue. But again, it's something that should be looked at. It's really critical that we do what's best for the taxpayers.
In the past, I mean, I know that, of course, that they felt there was a shortfall in Albany County, and they raised the taxes from 7% to 8%. And I know even in Delmar here that people, there are a little bit of a surplus, and that's why some of the money went to Delmar. How do you feel about taxes, or to raising them up on the residents?
Well, again, the sales tax issue. In 1992, the sales tax was a temporary increase from 7% to 8%. And before raising taxes, I think it's important that we have a handle on Albany County's financial health before we make decisions. Just going back with the 93 numbers, there was an $8 million difference in the surplus, but at that time, the politicians have decided to extend the sales tax without really knowing the financial picture of Albany County. So that's one thing that I'll be bringing to this office. Well, with the accurate numbers, we'll be able to make informed decisions.
And the revenue of Albany County is mainly from the sales tax? That's really what they're
The sales tax brings to Albany County between $18 to $24 million a year. The additional 1%.
And generally, that's where they get their funds. What are the other functions that they have to worry about? I mean, just besides, when we talked about Knapek Arena, the airport, what are the other functions that they're going to be spending their money that needs maybe to be audited? I know the roads, I mean, I'm familiar for all the inner workings of government, but I know always the roads are being taken care of by Albany County.
Mm-hmm. Just that the comptroller's office really doesn't get involved with the decisions on the process of making of the roads, and that's more for the county executive. The main thing for the comptroller, which is even stated in the Article 4 of the Albany County Charter, the duties of the comptroller, it's an audit function. You're authorizing what bills should be paid, and if the cash flow is available, and you want to make sure that the cash flow is continually moving along by getting the federal and state aid billing out on a timely basis, and investment decisions, and those kind of things. Some of those other issues are more for the Albany County executive position. Yes.
And really, the Albany County is centered on State Street, isn't it? Those are the offices.
Yes, on 112 State Street. That is correct.
That's where all the offices and all the functions of the state are over here.
Yes.
But Larry, I mean, where are you going to Albany County? I mean, do you have? I mean, you as representatives or board of the Independence Party? We didn't say, or it's mainly you're making the decision.
Oh no.
To endorse. Or?
Oh no. No, we have we had a 10-member screening committee for all of the 40 candidates who were offered the endorsement of the Independence Party this year. And the primary things that were being looked for, very importantly, were that that the candidates were in agreement with one or two or three different principles. One, that they would take no PAC money. This is a party platform. We're not interested in, especially our party works against the idea of special interest money controlling government. Also, that they had to have a plan for involving volunteers in the execution of their office once they were elected. And third of all, that they had to not show any particular racism or prejudice or bias towards any group You know, and that's because we had a very representative committee from inner city to outer county as well. And they also needed to show a good understanding of the fact that if we wish to prevent the Albany County from going the way of Schenectady County and Rensselaer County, where the city itself goes down and the property values of the county surrounding it fall, we have to work very diligently with the inner city and the city of Albany, the county does, in order to make sure that it all continues to grow and expand. So we tried to press upon people that we endorsed in the outer reaches of the county, for instance, that they had to be conversant with the fact that they needed to be working with the city and the inner city to make sure that the whole thing you know, worked over time. This is primarily has to do with county allocation of funds to the city and how those might be spent to bring about more economic opportunity, especially in the inner city. So these were the qualifications that the 10-member board were looking at. We have a 5-person executive committee in Monroe County, which is where the seat of the party is. Monroe County, Rochester, where Tom Golisano, who his business is Paychecks, which many Jewish businessmen are familiar with Paychecks, and that's where they're centered in Rochester. We have the unique situation of being the hosts of the state party here in the state capitol, which we've done a couple of times so far. It's a wonderful opportunity. Yes, well, we had the first meeting of the county chairs of the Independence Party occurred earlier this month here in Albany. The important point is that our party is divided into regions. For the Capital District region, the one marketing area, viewing area, I'm also the regional coordinator as well as the chairman of Albany County, and I've been involved in the appointment of the chairman of the surrounding counties here in the Capital District area. One last thing, the party has a decided stand on a basically pro-environmental kind of stand, where, for instance, we're against the burn plant for Green Island because of what it will do, we feel, to the air quality here locally, and how important that is. And we're very interested in what will happen with the solid waste issue over time. And we've assembled a committee within the party to study the issue carefully, because, as you know, there are plans to put a big solid waste effort by the city of Albany to force
from all over the state.
Yes, flow control, to get within a 100-mile radius to have all of the garbage come to Albany for what can be reclaimed, okay, and then to put what can't be reclaimed into a dump in Queens. Okay, so our party is also against that and feels that there's excess capacity up north of here, and that this could turn into another boondoggle like the Nick Arena, for instance, where all kinds of taxpayer money is spent to develop something which in and of itself doesn't make a profit and has to be sold off for a loss. So those were our basic major issues.
But in Albany County itself, just the good government is really, on any specific local races.
Oh, and yes,
taxes,
yes.
Is it pro-taxes or?
Yes, okay, well, as far as in Albany County itself is concerned, if you looked at all 40 candidates, you would see that we've endorsed...
These 40 candidates, what are Albany County?
Yes, yes, there are over 1,000 statewide running on the independence line with the independence endorsement. Over 1,000 statewide. The party now has 39 county organizations throughout New York State so far, and it only began January 1st.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you have that big of an organization.
But in Albany County itself, what we are really talking about is basically this. Those of us who are in private industry have experienced it, and those of us who are in maybe nonprofit and other places have experienced it too. There's been a tremendous change in productivity over the last 15 to 20 years, and organization of how businesses do business. And what has not yet quite happened is that local government and state government hasn't been brought up yet to that same standard. This is what part of what is going on. We've had a technological revolution which has displaced a lot of people, made a lot of people into self-employed, and et cetera. But the important thing is that the level of government services, the delivery of government services, needs to modernize same way as industry already has. And in that modernization, the average citizen should have the opportunity to be part of what comes from that. In this case of the County of Albany, we're at the point of an unprecedented possible change, which would mean that for the first time we could have a review of how our tax dollars are being spent, an open book review of how all of the money is being spent, so we could see if that's the way we want to keep spending it. That's what's coming up at this juncture point as a possibility. And of course, that's why we feel that a professional CPA who really can control and work with the numbers would be a great assistance to the people of the County of Albany, and, you know, bringing the county government into the 21st century.
It's going to allow technology. The streamlined government also is important. Also, of course, I mean that's a major issue. I mean, it's of course in Albany. I mean it's always a major issue. It's more major than probably in other areas because of some of these, you know, government workers over here. But is that going to be an issue also? I mean, you feel there was sometimes with streamlining, with computerizing, and just like even maybe even controlling, just saying there's too much excess in the budget over here, and it's been padded throughout the, say, years really, because of just party politics, for example.
Well, we're talking about really looking at this from a fiscally conservative point of view with a heart. Okay, people's lives are intertwined with this. It's not their fault that this is the way the system has been in the past. Now we're at a juncture point, and the question becomes: is there enough fat because of patronage and nepotism and other things of that nature? Is there really enough fat in the county budget that a reorganization of the budget to deliver services better would not necessarily mean that people would lose their jobs? Okay, but it might mean that, I mean, I can't talk to that. That's not for me. But as a citizen, I can say that the hope is that we have, because of historically, we have enough flab in our budget that we can deliver excellent services without raising taxes, and that we can have show some heart and compassion for all the social services that are being provided. Okay, we don't need to end government's role in social services. It's a very good thing to a point. We need to take out a lot of the excesses that have resulted from it.
That's excellent. I know I was just noting that from your party stance, it is really a mixture of a lot of things like hard-nosed politics to just get to be realistic, that sometimes people go off and say social services and, you know, oh, it wouldn't be wonderful if we had so much education. It wouldn't be, you know, they're talking, you see, for talking from hits, they're talking in the air because there's just no money for it. And it's all beautiful, and people are taken up sometimes with all this nice rhetoric. And you say, well, you know, it's nice to talk about, but we want to see it. And there's just dollars and cents, and you have to do what you have to do when it comes to a budget. But on the other hand, you can't just be so hard-nosed like a hard-nosed businessman and saying, hey, there are people who need help, there's education, there are kids out there, and there are, unfortunately, there's people who are always, it's always part of Judaism, there's always part of charity, there's always part of the intrinsic part of Judaism. Whether it has that much to do with government over here, that's maybe a whole different discussion in its own right of the role of helping your fellow man, whether it should be on a man-to-man level, you know, just saying it down roots level through the person's synagogue or their temple or whatever have you, or it's a government function, but still you could say that it has to be grounded into reality. And
well, what we do know, I think, from our faith, and we aren't alone in knowing this, is that generally, if we all extend ourselves to give more back than we take, there will be more for everyone, and there is enough for everyone to have a life. And part of the problem that we have in this country right now, and it is a problem, is that we waste a lot of people, and that our system wastes a lot of people. And this has to end, because what's happening is when the baby boomers become of age and they're relying on the workforce to support them through Social Security, which is what we're doing now for the generation ahead of us, if we've managed to make sure that 20 or 30% of the people who might be black and Hispanic of the total population don't get properly educated and become taxpayers, okay, the machine, the economic machine is not going to be able to produce the standard of living for us when we're retired. It becomes a fundamental economic issue to make sure that there's economic opportunity and that we don't lose large percents of people, which is what we've been doing in this country for the last 20 years.
yes, and this is really a bigger scale picture, but it really touches down in Albany County, I think, also, because really down the welfare system, like the social services, and I know there's a lot of social services. I had helped many people that you know, needed services, so I had to go down there with them. I know as a rabbi, it's maybe not a social worker, but it's really really, my wife says, you know, for the most part, a lot of times it is helping people, is social worker. And that's how a rabbi used to be in the olden days. The rabbi would collect funds and then dole them out to the needy over here. I mean, that's hundreds of years ago.
The rabbi's discretionary fund, are we talking about?
Well, many times it was.
That's right.
Was like that hometown things that the rabbi would have the knowledge of who's in need. People would come to him, and of course, secretly, sometimes they'd be ashamed that they need charity, and people rich, they trusted the rabbi. You take care of it or something. There wasn't any bureaucracy there, but it's like the bigger function. But still, I know to go down to Albany County to the social services, people say, I need something or whatever. Well, there is government programs, and a lot of times people just don't even know that they're there to help.
Well, Larry could tell you about it, but it's a big piece of the budget.
Yes, absolutely. I am not sure the actual percentage of the new budget because I haven't seen the whole budget in full for this year. But I know that there's definitely a majority percentage for the social service program.
Over half of the budget is for...
I think it's 52%.
52% of the budget goes for social services.
Well, of course, again, just to, like you're saying, take away the fraud and all the padding of all these programs, which in itself are good, but if everybody, like you say, if they really need it, then you really need it, but if you don't, then...
I have just a small story to relate that would kind of illustrate that a little bit. I have a master's degree in criminal justice administration, and from the school, SUNY Albany here, School of Criminal Justice, 1974, and I worked 2 years for the state of New York for the Division of Criminal Justice Services as a crime control planner in New York City after I got my degree. And, well, I came out all full of idealism, brand new master's degree, and I expected as a crime control planner that I would have a major impact on the, experimental programs that were being funded by the federal government at that time for crime control. In fact, in the years that I worked there, the average budget allocation for New York State was $47 million a year was going into these crime control programs. And my position was to write the paperwork to the federal government that justified getting the money. I mean, I was supervised and all that sort of thing, but that's what my unit did. So it was a great surprise to me to learn over the course of the 2 years that the money was already spent before it ever got here, and it was leveraged out every direction. And the story that sticks with me the most, and maybe it gives a little bit of an idea of why I am where I am today and why I favor this type of party politics, was I was responsible for reading the New York City plan in 1976, and it was like this thick or so, and I read it, and I was helping the negotiator who was negotiating with the New York City people over about $25 million, and we had already trashed the plans from some upstate places as not being compliant enough with the federal government. This New York City budget, it was nowhere near anything that had anything to do with reality. It basically said, we already long since spent the money, give it to us, it'll be gone the day we get it, and here's some stuff we did. I mean, really, it was terrible, horrendous. Okay? Going into this negotiation, I was pulled aside and told not to say anything or be surprised, just to keep it, just observe what happens. I watched our negotiator go in, and the negotiator from New York City said, how'd you like our plan? And the New York Times was waiting just outside the door, etc., and our negotiator said it was sufficient. And she looked him in the eye and she said, oh, no. Sufficient is not enough. This is the best plan that you received from the entire state. I was sitting there and I said, I'm out of here. I said, this is a sham. I'm not going to live my whole life turning myself inside out for something that's a total sham. Now, when you come at it from that point of view, those were in the heydays of federal aid to states and, huge monies. You can understand why come at it from a different point of view and think maybe.
All right, I think the two Larrys, Larry Rosenbaum of the Defense Party, wish you our success, and then Mazel, we say in Yiddish, with luck and growing. I think that you're on sound basis of a lot of people's thoughts and minds, and Knapek, with your CPA, hopefully you'll go on and do good things for the Albany County community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.